Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Rose to the Ceilings podcast. Today we have with us a special guest. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ashley Wilson. I am a licensed social worker here in New Jersey. I work in private practice and I also work with a lot of youth. Um, so that's just to get started, and I can kind of go more into a little bit more of what I do as the questions come in.
You mentioned that you chose to work specifically with youth. What made you decide to do that? Because I know social work is like super broad, right? So, what was it about working with youth that like drew you to that?
Okay, yeah. I feel like I'm a millennial, so it's just kind of like for me, I feel like there's a connection that I have with youth where I think a lot of times, just as we get older, sometimes we forget that we were once kids ourselves. We forget about the different experiences that we've had, a lot of the traumas and triggers that we probably had to overcome in our life. So just being that I am in this space and I have the opportunity to use my wisdom and use my experiences, use my skills to help young people, it's one of the most rewarding careers that I could have went into.
Oh, that's so sweet. So what does that kind of involve? Like when you like work with youth, like what kind of stuff do you work through with them?
Okay. During the daytime, I work in a high school. I'm a high school social worker during the daytime. And then in the evenings, I work in private practice. So when I work in private practice, I'm working with a variety of, I would say, teenagers, 20, 30s, and 40s, specifically mostly women. But in high school, working with the students on a daily basis, I am helping them with a lot of social emotional learning. So, helping them understand self awareness, social awareness, how they can do conflict resolution amongst their peers, a lot of family issues. Unfortunately, we have like a lot of teenagers, a lot of youth that are going through things with their families. And that could include anything from being displaced, homelessness, also experiencing death in the family or parents that are actually ill. So a lot of times it's a combination of all things. I think one of the bigger things is probably peer relationships. Peer relationships and family issues would be the two I think I probably see the most. But then we have a lot of teens that also experience anxiety and depression as well.
That's so nice that your school is able to give that resource to the kids. Now, I'm just wondering, I don't really know how it works in the States, but is it common for schools to have this kind of resource to have like a social worker based in the school, or is it more like on a rare side?
Okay, yeah. So every school out here, no matter what grade, from kindergarten all the way up to at least I know high school, I'm almost positive I know that there are social workers in colleges as well out here. I know at my school we have two. Our school is one of the fortunate schools to be able to have it in their budget to have two social workers. So we kind of just split up our caseload because it's a high school. I mostly work with the ninth and 11th graders, and then my coworker works with the 10th and the 12th. But the students have the right to kind of like go to whoever they feel the most comfortable with, because sometimes our approaches can be very different, and somebody might take a liking to one social worker where the other social worker might take a liking with other students.
So, what are the sessions kind of like? Is it more like a counseling, like sit down and talk kind of session, or is there another way around to do it?
So there's a variety. I say Monday through Friday. The bigger part of my day will probably be check-in. So that student's coming to check in with me for about 15 minutes. They're supposed to see me for 15 minutes, but sometimes it goes over to maybe about 20 minutes, 25 sometimes. But on occasion, there might be a student who may need to stay a little longer than that. Our schools also provide other resources as well. So, like, we work with external partners within the school. So, even though we have two social workers in the school, we also have a guidance counselor. And then we also have like other practices that are in our office. So, like, for example, we have two different services that we work with within our school. We have another therapy provider that comes into school. They work with the students weekly, maybe for about 45 minutes, which would be just about their whole class period, where they get to go in and talk with them. And that is also to kind of give a little bit of relief to us since we're in the building consistently. We have to see a numerous amount variety of students throughout the week. So normally within the week, I would say probably daily, I probably see about, it could be anywhere between like 15 and 20 students in a day. Sometimes students come to me in pairs, sometimes they come to me in groups. If there is a conflict that we're trying to resolve within the school, then sometimes that might be 5 or 6 students at a time. That can also include us reaching out to parents. Like I said, some of the parents might be experiencing some challenges or some difficulties, which also affects the student. So we have programs that also like provide the families with food if they feel like they're having food scarcity. If they feel like they need family therapy, we have resources that we will refer them for that will provide them with family therapy. Also different types of like parent workshops. So that's also probably a majority of what I'm also doing is also programming different types of workshops for the parents as well as for the school. So this month has been Mental Health Awareness Month. So my schedule had been very busy in the past 2 weeks. We have something at my school called the Mental Health Task Force Coordinator. That's also me, and then I'm also the HIB specialist, which is harassment. What is the I? Oh God, geez, harassment, intimidation, and bullying specialist. So those are two separate jobs. So like typically if a student is being bullied and they want to kind of like pursue a little bit more of a conflict resolution that involves and that is probably a higher level of care as far as like needing to have an investigation, and that I would have to take care of that. Um, if it is as far as the mental health task force, with it being Mental Health Awareness Month, I was responsible for planning all the activities for the week. So that included having speakers come into the school and talk to the students about different mental health things. I planned a scavenger hunt where they had to go find different mental health facts about teens throughout the school, and if they found like 3, I gave them a prize. They would have to bring them to me.
Oh.
So it can be very fun, and it can be also very challenging at times.
Yeah, that must take a lot of mental and emotional energy to take care of that many clients and wear that many hats and different kind of tasks that you wouldn't typically think of a counselor doing. So I'm curious how you might set boundaries around that or what kind of challenges you might have faced in your roles.
Absolutely. So, actually, graduating from my MSW program, I had no intentions on going to school social work. I'm actually through school a clinical based social worker. So it was a lot of learning, and it's a lot of different experiences that I had to kind of learn on the job because there wasn't like a manual to kind of. I got a little fortunate with the manual. The Board of Education in our department doesn't really provide you with too much of a manual, but that like explains how to do everything. But luckily, at my job, the previous social worker kind of created a manual to explain everything to me, so I got lucky in that way. As far as boundaries are concerned, it can be very hectic because Huh. One thing that I can say is like sometimes kids just don't understand boundaries. And then it's like also trying to be very sensitive to their emotions as well, because sometimes they can take things very personally when it's not meant to be taken so personally. Like for example, they will get very attached very quickly, and they'll say, "Hey, you're my social worker. You're supposed to be available for me." And it's like if I have to see like 5, 6 other kids in a day, it's like it's not really fair if you're hogging all of the time. I think another challenge would be there is a lot of like emotionally challenging subjects that involve teens, that involve kids in general, that I think a lot of people may not think about that these are like different situations that may come up. And I'll just give you a quick example of something I dealt with recently. But for example, one challenge that could happen is in regards to like social media in general. You have a lot of teenagers that are on social media, and it could be anything from bullying, it could be anything from them talking to strangers, um, and giving away personal information on the internet, and that also impacts the families. So there's just like a lot of different little things like that, because there are some situations where kids may feel like I don't have any friends, and or they are experiencing other things like I know for a fact there's quite a few kids that probably at the school have parents that may be struggling, like I said, like with this very severe illness where um, they now have to go through grief counseling. So it's like you may come to work that day and think, okay, well, this is on my schedule. This is what how I'm planning my day out. But then you just don't know what a student might be dealing with. And when they come in to talk to you, your whole schedule, your whole plan kind of goes out the window.
Is that like emotionally taxing for you too to have to be able to take on everyone's kind of grief, to take on like try to help everyone as best as you can, but also like trying to keep it professional? Like how do you deal with like the emotional sides of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be very emotionally taxing. So one thing that recently I have to give myself kudos for is I actually just got my own therapist recently. And I think that's one thing that sometimes therapists struggle with is that you may feel like, okay, well, I've got it all down packed. I'm fine. Like I've been trained. I know all of the coping skills. I know what I need to do when I'm feeling down. But sometimes, like you may have a day where it's just something that you just can't shake. It could be something that you may have experienced in your life that, and they talk about this a lot in social work school, is that there may be a trigger, that a trauma, something that you've had happen to you in your life that you don't even think about until you have to deal with a client that it reminds you of that exact situation. um, and having a therapist is also just really good because as a therapist you're able to bounce experiences off of that person. In most situations, like for example, I'm an LSW, my therapist is a LCSW, so she's been where I've been. She's had to go through the experiences of the things that I'm currently going through as a new therapist. And there's something that someone taught me is that is to mainly say, even to say, like, as a new therapist, there are experiences you'll have as a seasoned therapist that it will still be new to you. It might be something that you've never experienced before. And just having that person that you can kind of go to and talk about the different things, that understands you, that understands, like how challenging it could be. Especially as somebody that cares a lot, because most of us, we go into the field because we care about people. We want to help people, and we can't help others unless we can help ourselves.
It's a really nice thing to keep in mind, definitely. Because another thing I was wondering, like you mentioned, a lot of these resources that your school has. I was wondering how many kids actually use these resources. Like about like a percentage, maybe like about 20% of the kids know about this and like go to you guys and talk to you guys. Like how many kids like know about these resources and are actually like using them?
So, like on a weekly basis, I would say we do our best to kind of like spread the information throughout the school. We put flyers up when the students come and talk to us. It's our chance to kind of do an assessment and see what they may need. Because sometimes the students are not aware, even though we tell them all the time, sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other because they have so many other distractions. They're focused on school. And that's also something that we do work with them with, even as a social worker. Is like I talk to them a lot about their academic performance because sometimes we may not necessarily be aware that of something, a challenge that they might be experiencing at home outside of the school that might be affecting their grades as well. Um, so anytime that the students come to our office, they have all of the different things that they may need as far as like flyers. Our bulletin boards are always kept up to date. I try to keep my boards like as like creative and like colorful as possible. I also allow the students to kind of come in and help me with different things so that way they can, let's just say, for example, they become like ambassadors where if they know that they're comfortable talking to me, they will normally go back and tell their friends, like, hey, if you're having this problem, you should go talk to Miss Wilson because she's helped me with this problem. I was having this problem and she's helped me. I think another thing that um, probably students come to talk to me a lot about is relationships. Because realistically, in high school, you start dating for the first time. You start realizing like your emotions and like, oh, I actually like this girl, or I like this boy, or just figuring themselves out. So sometimes they come to me about their relationship issues as well, and they're like, "Hey, I went to Miss Wilson, and she gave me some good advice." And like now, I'm like, I'm kind of figuring out who I am, or like I'm getting over this breakup. So it's they figure it out either through word of mouth or through like seeing things on the boards and things. But we also do announcements every morning as well, and in the afternoon. And then another cool thing I can say that is probably different than my generation is the use of like the internet. So most of their assignments are through Google Classroom now. So it's like they just log onto their computer and everything is right there. So I can also post messages on their Google Classrooms that goes out to all of the students, and then they're able to see like any type of announcements that I might personally want to let the students be aware of.
Yeah, no, the Google Classroom thing. Too much, too close to home, I guess. Um, I was wondering, you meant I don't think you touched on this a little bit, but you brought up the words like social worker and counselor and like therapist. Are they like, can you explain the difference or like the similarities between terms? Like, are they interchangeable? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so I'll start with counselor. Yeah, I'll start with counselor. So, like, as a counselor, your main focus is really counseling. So, like, in a sense, it is very much therapy focused versus being a social worker, which is like you have so many different avenues as a social worker, which is the reason why I chose to be a LSW or a social worker instead of going for like you have like your, I think if you're a counselor, then you can get like a LPC, which is licensed practical counselor. I think that's what LPC stands for. Um, but so as a social worker, you could work in community. So that could be like case management, where you're mainly dealing with calling clients. They may have like some type of case or something like some specific type of situation. It could be in the hospital, which would be the same thing, case management there. If you're not doing case management, you could also do like grant writing. So writing grants for different organizations for them to get money for whatever type of programs or different workshops and things that they're trying to fund money for. You can also work in, let's just say, even working in politics or working in the government. As a social worker, you may have a better understanding of how community outreach works. um, there's so many different areas. As far as like being a therapist, I mean, that's always an option. You can go into like private practice. You could work, let's see, private practice. You could also work as an art therapist, which there's like, as far as being a therapist, there's so many different areas. So outside of doing the school and doing private practice, I also work as an art therapist, but I work with a nonprofit. So there's so many different avenues. I have a master's degree in social work, and then I also have a master's degree in strategic communications. So when I was mainly using my strategic communication role, I was working for a nonprofit that works with mental health. So, for example, they run groups, but I ran their social media. I ran their social media. I also did like a lot of their community outreach. So, like if there was like some type of event, or if we were going to colleges, I would be the person at the table handing out information, getting people signed up, telling them about what the program is, also doing the photography for different things. So there's like really a wide range. And I feel like as a social worker, you wear a lot of different hats. There's so many opportunities, so many different things you can go into. Like if there's something that you feel like you're really skilled at and something that you're passionate about, there's always an opportunity for you.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
That is really sweet. That is kind of just like there's like something for everyone almost in that field.
it
Um,
is.
So the people you work with is really similar to what our like audience is too. Like we have a lot of our listeners are teenage girls who are probably going through a lot of things that you've already mentioned, like relationship things or like depression or anxiety or like just any other like issues that a regular high schooler might go through. Now I know you're not gonna be able to hear their like specific scenarios, but is there any like general advice you wish that you could tell all your students and all of our listeners?
I would say that the one big one I would say is trust your instincts. I think a lot of times we know what the right thing to do is, but sometimes it's just hard, or it can be like really rough for us to make a decision. And but that really goes back to trusting yourself. That confidence piece is really big. I feel like a lot of times, especially in this day and age, it's easy to kind of get caught up into what everyone else thinks, but it's really comes down to like what you think. Also, I would say as far as like coping skills, because that is something that like can be useful for anyone. whatever it is that you enjoy doing, lean into that, because that is literally going to be there for you regardless of like any time or place. Like there's certain things that you may not even realize are self-care, but like even little things like reading your favorite book, listening to your favorite music, that is super calming. Just in case of safety precautions, but like lighting candles, like if they smell good, having like a cup of tea, drinking water is a big one. Because I think even so, sometimes I know a lot of kids are going to Starbucks. Caffeine can be really bad for you. Sometimes it's hard to regulate your emotions when you have a stimulant in your system, and a lot of people probably are not thinking about that because it's like, oh, it tastes so good. But like limiting the amount of coffee or like anything that has like caffeine in it, that is like probably one of the bigger ones. Also, sugar intake, because sugar can also like mess up your sleep. It can mess up a lot of different things with the balancing of your body. And then I think like just to get back to the self-care is like loving yourself first. um, there should be like no shame in like literally being selfish at the point of loving yourself so much that you don't really care or desire or really need the love of others. Because sometimes it can be very hard for people to realize that their relationship with themselves is going to be their longest relationship, and it's going to be the most meaningful. And I think that is something that I probably, when if I was talking to my younger self, I would definitely say that, because I think when I was younger, I probably looked for love in a lot of different people and a lot of different places, and it was like the love that I have for myself now is at such a level where there's nothing anyone can tell me that would tilt my self-esteem, or my confidence in that matter. And I mean, we all have our moments where it's like, like imposter syndrome. Like, I don't feel like I'm good enough, or I feel like maybe I'm not enough, or I'm not experienced enough. But the thing is like that you realize the longer you live, the more that you do, the more experience you have. So it's not something that you're lacking, it's just something you haven't done yet. Because let me ask you ladies, like what is something that you would say that you think that you've achieved that maybe someone else can't say that they have?
That's so
Started a
tough.
podcast.
Okay, that's a big one, because there are a lot of people that want to do this and they are very scared to do this. They're scared to take that first step to even do that. Do either one of you play sports?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
No, neither one of you?
Used to.
Okay, what sport did you play?
I played badminton.
Okay, so in badminton, I'm pretty sure you have to get in front of a lot of people who are watching you, right? And you have to go out there and put your best face forward and try to win a game, correct? There's a lot of people that can't say they've done that. There are a lot of people that have so much anxiety that they would not even try because they would be so afraid of failing that that would not even happen. I'm pretty sure even as far as like papers that you have written for school, there are people that have not gotten to that level yet, and they have not had that experience yet. So
It's like thinking of your accomplishments instead of like your failures per se.
yeah, it's like really like thinking about all of the things that you have done, and even if you feel like you haven't done that much, you've done a lot more than someone else. You where you are in your life right now, you've figured out something that someone else hasn't yet. Even
That's
if
very
it's something that
motivating.
you figured out about yourself, or even a relationship with a parent, there's someone who has not had that experience yet. So you girls are killing it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh, that is such a big motivator for us. Thank you so much.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Um, just another question, kind of related, kind of hopping off. So, do you think, like a lot of these kids who come into, to get counseling, are they like good after like 15 minutes, or do you say would you recommend they come back for check-ins like more regularly?
I feel like they may be good for the moment. It really depends, because I think the other thing is that it depends on your level of how much responsibility you take over your own life. Because sometimes, let's just say, for example, a student comes to me and they're talking to me about a problem with another student, right? There's always going to be another problem, especially like when you're a teenager, everything seems like a crisis. Um, and I'll just give you one example. specifically, but like a student came to me about an issue that she was having with a young boy that she was interested in, or somebody that she was talking to. And that was that issue. But then maybe like every day after that, there might be like maybe some type of a misunderstanding that happens with a friend, or so and so isn't speaking to me today, and I think that that's very weird. Like, what should I do? And it's just kind of like I have to kind of give the responsibility back to you in that sense, and just say, like, well, what do you think you should do? Because most of the time you know what you're supposed to do, but yet you come to me to ask because it's like you need to be given permission to do it. And I don't want students to become dependent on me, because at the end of the day, you're not always going to be in high school. Eventually, you're going to be out in this world by yourself, and you're going to have to figure it out. And you're not going to have somebody to kind of like go to say, like, well, what should I do? And it's like it's a privilege that you do have that right now to benefit. You should take advantage of it. But at the end of the day, you have to learn how to be able to think on your own and to make the right decision and figure out, like if I do make a mistake, it's okay, or I'll figure it out. Because I think even as far as having conflict resolution with your friends, the answer was as simple as, why don't you go talk to her? And she's just looking at me like, yeah, I should go do that. And I'm like, yeah, just go talk to her. That's your friend. Like, and then it was funny because the friend came to me and said the same exact thing. She was worried, like, so and so's not speaking to me. And I'm just sitting there like, it's funny that she was just in here saying the same exact thing, that she thinks it's weird that you're not speaking to her. And this is clearly just a miscommunication, because something happened. Maybe one of you was or one of you is not reading, I guess, maybe the facial recognition of like the emotion the correct way, because both of them said that the other person looked mad, and neither one of them admitted that they thought that they looked upset. So it was very funny. But it was just as simple as just going to talk to the person, and then just like that, the problem was solved.
Yeah, that almost feels like something you'd see in like a sitcom, but no, I'm sure it happens.
It's real life. It is real life. It's really happening.
So it's just kind of that balance of like, oh, I can talk to someone, but at the same time, I can also like, I can figure it out. So like, are you saying it's just better to kind of like, ooh, kind of have both of these things going on for you?
Yeah, it's like knowing when you need to consult with somebody. And I say the same as a social worker, like as an adult. When you are in your LSW and you're working towards your clinical license, you have a supervisor. So it's not on my supervisor to like figure everything out for me, but I have to go out and I have to have these experiences, and I have to do things on my own. And then if I feel like I can't figure it out, or if there's something that is stumping me, or there's something that is emotionally triggering me and I don't know what to do, I have a supervisor to go to. And it's the same thing even with the students. It's me giving you the permission to use your power and allowing you to know that you do have the strength, you have the wisdom, you're learning these things. And if you don't have the wisdom yet, then that's what I'm there for the things you don't have the experience with, or for the things you don't know how to deal with. But like I said, the students can get very comfortable kind of like relying on me sometimes, and just saying like, because they know I'm a safe space. They know that they're extremely comfortable with me. They know that my room is like very relaxing, and they can come in there and zen out if they need a break away from the world, which I am happy to provide. It's just a matter of, you have to go back into the real world. And when you get out of high school, you're not going to be able to like be in a class, be in a lecture, and be like, hey, I'm going to the social worker's office because this is just way too much for me. You have to kind of like be able to kind of have that a little bit of tension in order to kind of get used to it, because sometimes when things are uncomfortable, we push them away. And I think when we're younger, we have a tendency to kind of do that a little bit more. If we don't like something, or we think we don't like something, or we feel like something is scary or something is too hard, we might just have some resistance and be like, I'm not doing this. I'm not good at it. But that's unfortunately the way academics are set up. There really isn't a lot of space for that, unfortunately. And that is where academia and mental health can sometimes clash. Because sometimes we put a lot of stress on students to get their grades up, to be the perfect student, to be on time, to always be like in attendance. And there has been, even recently, I watch a lot of K-dramas, and there's this one that I was watching called Sky Castle. And it was about how the families within this certain structure have been like stressing their kids out about high academics to the point where there's now students that are like either like considering suicide or like running away or possibly killing somebody over academic stress. And it's just kind of like, it's really not that, it shouldn't be that serious. Like getting good grades, going to a good college is wonderful, but it's like at the end of the day, it's not worth the detriment of your mental health.
I'm sure so many people listening to this can relate to everything you just said. Maybe, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, because no one's perfect. Like, that's the thing. Is like, and I think that is probably something else that I can kind of like put into this, just to kind of give people a view into my experiences. But growing up, like I like math. Me and math, we never got along. Like I was a liberal arts child my entire life. Art, anything with writing, anything with reading, that was probably like my comfort zone. But math was just never easy for me. And it was to the point that when I came out of high school, like my GPA was in the ground. It literally was like a 1.7, and that could be. I see students stress out in high school, especially at my high school, when their GPAs are really low like that. And it's like, I can honestly say that even after that, I went to school to get my esthetician's license. So I'm a licensed beautician. I worked in the makeup industry for a while. After that, I went back to school and got my associate's degree. When I got my associate's degree, I was on honors. When I went and got my bachelor's degree, I had scholarships that like paid for that. I was on honors. Then I went to school. I got accepted into two different master's programs. I had the luxury of being able to choose which one. Then I had a graduate assistantship, which I'll explain what that is if some of the people aren't not familiar with that. But I was able to get a graduate assistantship that paid for my entire first master's degree. And then after that, I went back to school a second time and got my second master's. So after having a 1.7 GPA in high school, I was on the honors all the way through four other college degrees. So it's really not, it doesn't define you. It really doesn't. And sometimes you need a break. Like realistically, I think sometimes students are afraid to kind of like really go with their heart. And if they feel like, maybe college isn't for me right now, or maybe I need some time to kind of like explore the world and figure it out and see what I really want to do instead of wasting time and wasting money. And then you're not even using your degree. So that also happens. And just kind of to go back to you said what?
That's just incredible. There's so many.
Yeah. I mean, and that is the reality for a lot of people. Sometimes you just need a break.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know a lot of people kind of see like, oh, I got like a low grade. It's over. Like there's nothing I can do to come back from it. But like, you're doing so great. Like you're so incredible. And now that high school moment is just like, it's back there. So I think that's really like necessary for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah. And it's like I said, like you have a lot of students that are going through a lot of things. Like, I mean, even just thinking about like, some of the things that I was dealing with in high school, my grades weren't bad because I was a bad student, or it wasn't because I was cutting school or because I wasn't doing my work. I literally would try, and then certain grades, like as far as like math or maybe science, I just wasn't really interested in, or the math specifically, I just didn't understand it, in all honesty. For me, when I sometimes look at numbers, it's like looking at symbols or looking at hieroglyphs. It's just not it. My brain just does not calculate. But that does not necessarily affect me in my adult life. Like I'm able to pay my bills. I'm able to like figure out how to tip. I mean, for the most, like everything is like automatic now. So it's just kind of like it really didn't get in the way too much, because I think sometimes they'll say to like high school students like, oh, you're going to use this you're going to use this when you become an adult. Like, no, you're not. Yeah. You just have to do it to graduate, and then after you graduate, like you'll probably never see some of that stuff again, unless you work in a certain field. Maybe specific fields like engineering or like coding or like anything that involves like having to do math as a part of your job, then that's a possibility. But most of the time, those students that are interested in those things are normally really good at math.
That checks out. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think a lot of times in high schoolers, we look at all the things that we're bad at, and then we focus on those instead of the things that we're good at, because the world is so small to us, and it's hard to kind of find that thing that we're passionate about. So I guess to end us off, I just want to ask you to maybe say a bit about how you found your passion or how you suggest other people to go out and find what their strength is, what their interest is.
So I would say that I have always been interested in people, arts, caring about people, the world. I think in my associate's degree, so after high school, I was taking sociology. And I think that's when I started to notice that I cared a lot about, like, how different people are and how different people think, and how it's okay for people to be different and have different opinions and different perspectives and come from different cultures. I think that is one of the things that makes this world such a beautiful place, is that we can be friends and have communication and community with people that aren't like us. Um, and I think also just in general, like even with art, the big thing about art is because outside of like everything else, I'm also a photographer. So just being able to see people as they are, not expecting anything outside of that. But I think as far as like encouraging other people to kind of like explore their passions, whatever thing you enjoy the most, you can make a career out of it. So like if you feel like you're a good listener, and your friends always come to you for good advice, you'll probably be a great therapist. You'll probably be a wonderful social worker. If you feel like you care a lot about people, you probably would also be a good social worker, but you also might want to take that to a step higher and become like a nurse or a doctor. If you feel like you really find beauty in math, because there are people that do find beauty in math and find beauty in numbers, then anything in the engineering fields or anything like that. If you love music, I would definitely recommend going into music. I think people sometimes um, put a cap on what somebody else can do, specifically parents sometimes, if they don't have a lot of awareness about it. If a parent has never worked in the music industry or has never played an instrument before, they're not really going to understand your passion. They're not going to understand what drives you. They're not going to understand the type of jobs that are out there. So that's the other part, is I would say do research, look into what career field you're interested in. And then also do not be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn. That is a big one. If you have a LinkedIn and you are starting to build like your profile, even if you're working a small job or you're not working a job at all, LinkedIn is where you can kind of communicate with professionals. Do not be afraid to reach out to somebody at a college that you're interested in, in a career field that you're interested in, a specific job, a specific company. Do not be afraid, because worst case scenario, they don't respond. Best case scenario, they answer your question, and then you also build a connection with someone and you're able to add them to your network. So definitely don't, I think, put fears to the side. Um, and then just kind of like follow your heart, do a bunch of different things. And then that also helps you figure it out. Because I feel like I was that person. I did a bunch of different things, and even now I'm able to kind of like use different skills at different times. So like as a high school social worker, school is about to let out. So from June, July, August, I'm going to be not working that job at all. But I have other things that I'm able to do. So working private practice, I'm able to take on more clients. Like I said, I do photography as well. So during the summertime, there's a lot of like events, there's birthday parties, there's weddings. I'm able to do those things during the summertime. I also, this is a random fact, but I also DJ. So like maybe
Ooh.
last, this is what I'm telling you. I've done it all. I literally have. Last year I did more DJing than I did this year, because I wanted to lean more into my social work stuff since I got licensed. And since I'm working towards my clinical license. But last year I was DJing during the summertime. So there's always like, your hobbies can become other things that you do for work. I mean, there's always multiple ways you can make money. And I feel like in this day and age and in this society, with the economy being the way it is better to have more than one way to make money. Especially if you like nice things, if you like, I mean, there's trips, traveling, everything is expensive. Food, experiences. So it's nothing to have a skill that is transferable.
Well, thank you so much for all your advice and all your insights. Before we let you go, is there anything, any last thing you want to like shout out, like anything you want to promote real?
Well, I want to shout out you girls
Oh.
because you guys are out there networking and making things happen for yourself. That's how you guys found me. So you guys are like doing the most amazing work for the people that are coming to see your podcast because they are able to kind of take in all of this knowledge that you guys are like reaching out to have people come on here and share. You're welcome. And then the other thing I do want to tell everybody about is I have a website, healingbeing.org. It's like HEALING, being BEING.org. And on that website, you can go on there and learn different things about like mental health, but it's more specifically about how to do things for yourself at home, whether it's using crystals, whether it's using candles, music. There's a lot of stuff on there about music where you can kind of connect more so even from a spiritual, emotional, mental aspect of like how to connect with your favorite music and favorite songs. But there's a lot of information on there. I don't do therapy on that website. That's mostly like for coaching, if anything else, which is a whole different realm. You guys I could talk all day about that, but I'm not. But definitely join me on there. And then on social media, my Instagram is Strange Wonderful. And on Threads, it's also Strange Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll make sure to have that all linked. Thank you so much
Okay.
for talking to us and your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies.